Connor Cohen is with me this morning. He's from CFACT. He is a senior policy analyst. The DOE assessment climate science is back. I told you I'm having a hard time with words today. Good morning, Bonner. Thanks for being here again.
Good morning, Fawn. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So, when we talk about climate science, I would really prefer if they would just stop talking about climate science like there's only one side to it. Wouldn't you?
Yes, and that is exactly what we were not just spoon-fed, I would say force-fed, not for years, but for decades, one side. We were told that through our activities, we, human beings, through our use of fossil fuels and certain agricultural practices, were emitting unacceptable amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Those greenhouse gases were then trapping the heat on the Earth, leading to a potentially catastrophic warming of the planet with melting glaciers, more hurricanes, more tornadoes, more droughts, more floods, you name it. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of problems with that. Yes, there has actually been a slight warming over the past 250 years, beginning with the end of the Little Ice Age.
It's a cycle.
That, however, long predated the man-made emissions of greenhouse gases, and in cause and effect relationships, the cause precedes the effect. So something that got underway almost 300 years ago cannot have been caused by something that dates primarily from the end of World War II. But these people, from the very beginning, were never interested in providing us a balanced view of all the crazy things that go on in climate. Rather, they used the climate as a pretext for gaining control over us. Because what were they trying to do? They were trying to get control of energy, and if you control energy, you control the people who need and use energy, and that was the game that was played. Actually played fairly successfully until sooner or later the cost of what they were imposing on them caught up with them, as well as all the lies they had told us, including we're having more hurricanes and more tornadoes than ever before. Not true. That data simply do not support that. And atmospheric levels of CO2, carbon dioxide, yes, they're up, but that's actually a good thing because it's good for plant life, including crops. So at long last, the Department of Energy under Chris Wright has come out with a real balanced assessment of what is really going on in the climate as opposed to what we were told was going on. And we are now seeing, at long last, balance return to what was, to be perfectly honest with you, little more than propaganda.
Well, and I've said all along it's propaganda because everyone who has a brain knows you have to take care of the earth. We're not here to make her filthy or pollute the water or the sky or anything like that. We're doing the best we can with what we've got. But mandates to force us to do things that aren't really going to even make a difference are the problem. So I really don't feel like man is having that much of an impact on the climate, but we should very much be good stewards of our planet.
Absolutely. And it was hubris of these people to say that human activities can direct the climate.
Yeah.
That is, in two senses of the word. First of all, what we were doing, fossil fuels and agricultural practices were driving the climate. But an even greater hubris was, if we force people to buy electric vehicles, force them to do away with gasoline, with the gas-powered furnaces, and replace them with heat pumps, and do a whole bunch of other things, then that will change the climate. Well, that was hubris too. The fact is, we human beings, all 8 billion of us, are going to have to make do with whatever Mother Nature serves up climatologically, and that's really what we've done ever since we have been around. But to use that as a pretext for a gigantic power grab, which also in no small way was a money grab. Think of all the money, taxpayer money, that went from Washington, D.C. to politically favored groups on the outside to spread the propaganda, as well as to politically favored purveyors of green energy and other green technologies and products who line their pockets with our money. Well, at least for the time being, that scam is over.
It has to be. But you know what? They're going to continue the propaganda. So they've got our kids so invested in the fact that we're killing our planet that nothing we can tell them is going to change it. It's in movies. It's in cartoons. It's in sitcoms. I mean, if I start watching a movie and the first thing I see is somebody getting nervous because they're passing a yard because the people have Trump signs in their yard, or they say, oh my gosh, it won't stop raining. This climate change is so bad, blah, blah, blah. You know, they always have to include it in the script, and it drives me crazy. As soon as it starts and something like that happens, I shut it off.
It's going to take a long time to cleanse the culture of all the pollution that these people have inserted into it, pollution in the form of complete misrepresentations of the facts. And you're quite right. This starts K through 12, reinforced through social media, movies, you name it. Will they eventually walk away from this, seeing that the audience no longer cares? We can certainly hope so, but they're not going to go gently into that dark night. They're going to fight as long as possible because they're so invested in this. But remember, if you're interested in getting power over people, climate provided the keys to the kingdom. Well, not really the climate, but the climate scare. With that scare gone, what other ideas are you going to come up with to micromanage our lives? You'll have to come up with something else, and that's a very unpleasant thought for these people.
But they will. They will. They'll come up with something. They'll try to say, oh, you know, we've got to get a shot or something so that, you know,
that's right.
We can't sneeze. It's insane to me. So the climate scientists who were told to shut up and sit down this whole time when they were trying to mandate us into just doing whatever they told us to do, I really felt like the nanny state was getting out of control. So these climate scientists were saying, y'all are wrong. You can't look at these 100-year models. You can't even forecast the weather a week out, but you're supposed to know 100 years from now. Have they come off the bench? Are they able to speak now?
Yes, you will see more. Imagine that, First Amendment rights, people actually able to express their opinion and not be professionally penalized for it. This is a brave new world. But we saw this during the whole climate debate. Frankly, we saw it during COVID too, where physicians who called into questions things such as mask mandates, mandates for vaccines, social distancing, all that, knowing that there was actually very little science behind that, they too suffered professionally, and they too, I think, are seeing their First Amendment rights restored. So yes, there is a cultural shift going on here. We can only hope that it lasts. And that should the forces of darkness once again be in power in Washington and elsewhere, that the old regime will not be reimposed on us. So
how do we do that? I mean, that's a great thing to say, but how do we do that? Because if a lib gets back into the presidency, they could start this again if they get power back.
Yeah, they'll certainly try to, but we are through all sorts of things that have been going on, such as court decisions that have greatly limited the power of the federal regulatory states to impose regulations. Those things are going to make it much more difficult for these people, once they do get back in power, to recreate the world in which they were once so powerful. That regulatory state now has been not dismantled, but it has been greatly restricted in the harm that it can do. Meanwhile, for instance, by going after wind and solar, the Trump administration is frankly moving investors to take their money elsewhere, because without those taxpayer-funded subsidies that wind and solar get, they're not, from a business standpoint, they're not viable. And so you can hope that they will dry up. It's going to take a whole bunch of steps. The Biden administration said they were taking a whole of government approach to climate change. Actually, that was another statement. It was a whole of society, not just what government does, but as you pointed out, what the entertainment industry is doing, what the things that were going on in schools. Remember, the teachers themselves were indoctrinated, so nobody should be surprised that they should pass on that indoctrination to the next generation of kids. So this is not going to be an exercise in instant gratification. Fortunately for us now, the train is moving in the right direction. It's incumbent upon us to make sure it continues to go there. And each and every time you hear someone come up with the old, tired, and completely scientifically discredited narrative of man-made climate change, stand up and say, no, that is really not the way things are.
And it's not the way things are. And when you say that to a liberal, their head blows up. So,
that's right, because they live in an echo chamber.
They do.
They don't want to hear this, because you're undermining one of the sources of their power, and they don't like that at all.
I love when they say, do you believe in climate change? I say, yes. They say, oh, good, we've got to do something. I'm like, we're not doing it. The climate's been changing since the day the earth was formed. We're just here to make sure we're not being filthy animals, but we're not changing the climate. If storms are getting worse and this is not happening,
we don't have the power to do so.
And to think that we are is pretty arrogant. It's that simple. So where do people go to learn more about what CFAC does, Mr. Bonner?
Okay, check us out at our website, which is cfact.org.
Everybody do that and learn more. Climate science is actually back. Common sense is around the corner. So hopefully we can keep it this time. Bonner, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Vaughn.
Bye-bye.